JT Westerso of Locked On Utes. It's been an interesting topic this last week or so about BYU, NIL, how they're treating it with Rob Wright, college basketball, and somehow online, on Twitter, Utah fans and even on Cougar Board have wedged their way into the conversation. There's been a lot of talk about that state of Utah, these two programs, in the last 7 days because they've dominated the headlines based on this, the way that BYU spends its money. There was a tweet that I sent you, and it's what a lot of Utah fans got upset with. And it was a tweet from Ben Criddle, who is a friend of this program and someone that I have listened to on the radio in Salt Lake. And the entire crux of this is how BYU treats its NIL. So this is from Travis Hansen. He says, the quote to Criddle, there is this narrative that we outbid people, and we don't. We just outlove them, outdevelop them, and outpurpose them. And then a Utah Twitter account picked it up and said, this is, foolish. It's very Dabo Swinney. It seems like BYU is outbidding people for Rob Wright, $3.5 million. I don't know who was offering more. I wouldn't be surprised if BYU's outbidding. But Utah fans have almost taken offense or brought up the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints membership of BYU in this entire NIL conversation. Can you explain why Utah fans are so actively, they're always upset, but so actively upset at BYU over this NIL storyline?
Nice little throw at the end there. Okay, first of all, I can just sum it up simply why everyone's upset. It's rival. Anytime your rival is doing something and good players, it's going to bring about frustration. So that's why a lot of fans are upset. But yeah, and there's been some comments. I'm not touching on any of the religious stuff. That's just I've seen people accuse, hey, they're getting it from here. That's not what I'm talking about. But At the end of the day, yes, BYU is able to outbid teams. I don't know where that narrative has come from. I've heard before too about BYU offering players more, even for some Utah guys before, that. Hey, they offered more for them, and then they go there. That's something that's happened. And why is it a bad thing to outbid people, to have those resources, to do those things, to have Ryan Smith able to provide? So I don't understand what that's a bad thing. That's where it doesn't make sense to me. I think it's pretty clear that BYU is able to outbid and offer some of these players more money. I don't understand why that's a negative that BYU has been able to raise those. And it's a negative for Utah because it's dang, they're getting some of the best transfers and all of these things. But these guys, a guy like Rob Wright, it's not like he grew up a BYU basketball fan. So he's going, yes, now maybe was there another team that offered the same amount and he fell in love with BYU and decided to go there? Sure. But BYU can clearly outbid teams. They've shown the willingness to do that. And why is that a bad thing? That doesn't make any sense to me at all why it would be. And I know there's the reasons because, like we said, there's some things that have been said about hey, this is where they get their money from. I'm not here to talk about any of that. I'm just simply saying, why is it bad to outbid somebody? Yeah, Utah fans are just frustrated because BYU is getting really good players. And it's going to be really hard for Utah in basketball, especially, to beat BYU next year. If you can land the number one player in the country, how can you not outbid teams? In terms of, if you want to say, hey, we can't outbid the number one team, sure. You can outbid almost every other program in the country except for a 5 to 10 schools. If you can land the number one player in the country, you put yourself in that spot, you're going to be able to outbid most people. So I don't understand why that's a bad thing. It sets BYU up for future success, which is why Utah fans don't like it.
Why BYU is, I don't want to say flaunting, but the money that the program is, not the program, the money their NIL collective is spending right now seems pretty public. And some BYU sources or reporters have said, hey, look, when it was under the table, BYU didn't do it. There's an honor code to follow. Now that it's above table, BYU has a lot of money. They have a lot of donors, a lot of business owners. They're going to utilize that to succeed in college athletics the same way anybody else, the Power Four, would. Where is Utah? Is Utah just as rich in NIL? Are they just as competitive in the NIL game? They're just silent with how they do it? Because BYU does seem to be pretty public with the fact that they are ready to give out a good chunk of cash to these players.
Utah's gotten better in the NIL department. I think the fact that they were able to keep some of their best players is a good sign. Now, the fact that you have a guy like Keanu Tanavasa going from Utah to BYU, was NIL the only factor there? No, I don't think so. But I'll also say, when in one moment you're saying...
It wasn't NIL, it was the hug. It was the hug after the game.
Yeah, it was the hug. Exactly. Go all the way back to that. Yeah. But when you commit, this is what Tanavasa, we're going to go back to this just briefly. He said he was going to stay at Utah. Then he actually even shaded another player for leaving Utah. Then all of a sudden he goes, okay, I'm going to have a chance for him now. But That's interesting. Very interesting that was the approach. It wasn't as soon as the portal opened. Hey, that's Carson Ryan, the tight end who did that. That's what he did. He entered the portal right away. Then he went to BYU. That wasn't what Tano Vasa did. So, but going back to the NIL aspects of this, Utah has been able to keep some of their top players. They can compete NIL wise, but can they compete on BYU's level? They got to do it in order for me to say that. BYU is the one, especially as of late. Like, I made this point on my show, and I've seen some people get frustrated at me saying I'm being a downer. But hey, like, when you have, in the span of the past 2 weeks, BYU's landed 2 4-star players in the state of Utah over Utah. That's a bad sign there too. And NIL's not the only reason I'm saying that is, but I'm just saying, hey, when you're landing higher talent, that does show that BYU is right now in a stronger position if they're landing more recent 4-stars. Last time Utah added a 4-star was in July of last year. Like, that's, if you want to prove that, like, hey, you're on equal playing field, go out and do that. Basketball, they landed Dumbonsa, the number 1 player in the country is coming to BYU. How can I say Utah is on the same level as them when they haven't landed those players? So Utah NIL is getting better. I've liked a number of additions they've made for the men's basketball portal. They're clearly investing more in basketball. They got a GM in there now with former NBA experience, like assistant coach and Alex Jensen, like a lot of exciting momentum. But they also haven't landed a guy the level of Rob Wright. There's no one there there's no one that's level of Dumbonsa. So it feels like BYU is NIL more basketball heavy right now than football, even though they got some good players for football. I mentioned Tano Vasa being one of them, right? But it definitely feels like it's more of a basketball thing. Utah has NIL. They were able to keep some of their top guys. They've added a couple of nice pieces, but they haven't landed anywhere near the guys that BYU has, especially as of late with a couple of these. So how can I say that they're on equal playing field? Doesn't mean you can't beat them. I mean, we saw Utah earlier this year beat BYU in basketball at their home court, but they weren't favored in that game. And that's something I'm very interested to monitor going forward. Utah will definitely be able to compete with BYU. How many times going forward will Utah be favored in the NIL era when so far BYU has shown they have better NIL resources? So that's something I'm really curious to see, Drake.
Do we see from your chair, because I get berated often for hosting Locked On Big 12 and talking frequently about BYU and Utah. It's the biggest rivalry in the conference, and both the fan bases are as charged as any fan bases in this league. From your chair, I don't need you to wax poetic about BYU, but I want to know, are they the most, I don't want to say the richest, but are they in the best spot financially of any Big 12 school, given where they sit right now athletically? And part of that is, again, their affiliation to the fastest growing faith in the world, even though that faith doesn't directly give money to athletics.
I think it's them and Texas Tech. And Texas, what they did in the like before this football transfer portal, I probably would have said BYU. Yeah. And then Tech brings in a top 3 portal class. And I'm like, whoa, I took notice of that, especially when BYU did not bring in that level of football talent. And what Tech also did, they kept topping. Like, so once again, high level of NIL there as well. So right now, I would lean Tech slightly right now, even though BYU's landed in Bonsa. But if we're doing both sports, it's not really close for me there too. And Tech just landed a pass rusher from Stanford, right, Drake?
Yeah, out of the portal. Yes. Maybe kind of shocking. Yeah, one of the best.
That's another one. Like all these high level football players, which football is still the king sports, that's where Tech has done better than BYU. And the difference in the gap between the two seems to be smaller in basketball, where BYU is better, versus in football, it's a much bigger gap if we are just looking based on the talent. But at least right now, to me, it seems like the 3 programs most set up for success in the future of the NIL era in the Big 12, BYU, Texas Tech, and I'll even say Colorado. There's some rumors out there with Nico going there. Like, we'll see what Colorado does. But Deion seems to have a lot of people on the hype train. I like a lot of things about Deion. So, like, I totally support and get what he has going too. But yeah, I mean, you don't see, like, Utah's not bringing in that level of talent. Utah they brought in some good transfer players, but no one the level of the guys that Tech was able to add to. And Utah was at their best when they were able to recruit and develop. And that's what they're going to have to do once again to compete in this conference, because unless something changes, they have fine NIL resources. They do not have Texas Tech and BYU NIL resources based on what we've seen. I mean, those are the 3, like I said, those are the 3 right now that I look at that are set up for the best success in the NIL era. And obviously Colorado is only funding football, because we saw what happened with basketball this last season. Drake, do you feel like that's the top 3, or would you throw like maybe West Virginia or somewhere?
No, it's good. I think that's your 3. And it's tough to argue against. I just wanted to know if somebody outside of the chair of Locked On Big 12 sees it the same way. And it's looking very clear to everyone in the league who follows the league that those are the three schools at the top of this. And I would rephrase it to say Texas Tech, BYU, Deion Sanders, right?
Yeah, it's 1,000%. Like, we're talking about a team that was the doormat of the Pac-12 for a couple of those last years. So it's all Deion. And once again, like, I think Utah fans might listen to this and be mad at me, like, oh my gosh, JT, you're giving BYU their flowers. I'm literally just reading the numbers. They have added 2 guys that are clearly higher than what Utah could do NIL-wise. Like, that's what this comes down to. And that's where I will give the Cougars credit for that, absolutely, because that's what is going on. I try to call it like I see it, despite what I get from some BYU.
He's a journalist. He's a consummate professional.
It's the J and JT stands for journalism.
Big J and JT. Speaking of JT, where can folks find more of your journalistic work?
Yeah, you can find it at JT Wistersill on X, on Locked On Utes as well, on YouTube, publish Monday through Friday, and do some crossovers too. Also have some on our Big 12 Squad show coming up later this week too, which I'm sure we'll also be talking some NIL related things because it's still crazy.
Have to. That's coming out on Thursday night, 6 p.m. This has been It Always Will Be Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.